We're now been joined by an agricultural information consultant. He is Mr. African Farmer Mogaji, as we begin a conversation on how to boost food production in Nigeria. Good morning.
Good morning.
African Farmer.
Thank you. Good morning.
That name always makes people curious, including myself, as to why African Farmer. And
African farmer is someone who will be managing or consulting for farms across Africa.
Okay.
So if you have a farm in Nigeria, you'll be a Nigerian farmer.
Okay, you have a local name, a Nigerian name?
Yeah, Afiolua. My surname is still Mogaji.
Okay, Afiolua. So am I allowed to call you Afiolua as I switch from African Farmer to African?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Now, I'm sure you're aware about the launch of the Dry Season Farming Fund, 26 billion naira. What's your take about the timing of it? Because the dry season seems to have started a while ago, and the money is coming at the end of January.
Well, I'd like to first say this. I've been in dry season farming for over 25 years, and actively on a commercial scale, 15 years. Now, dry season actually starts. You start planning for dry season 6 months before October. And
6 months before October?
Yes, to have a successful dry season program, you start 6 months, or at the latest, 3 months.
So you're looking at around April?
Around April, you start planning for it around April. And if you're going to disburse or anything, it should come latest September. Latest September. So the funds coming in January, it's not the right time. And if you look back last year, the funds were launched in January, I think January 20 in Abuja. But so doing the same thing and expecting a different result won't work. So if they released it last year and we didn't really see the effect, and this year also we're taking the same toll, I think that's not adequate.
When we talk about within the effect, I'm just wondering, is it that 14 billion naira was released last year?
Yes.
There wasn't any impact at all regarding what the money was used for?
I would say there was not so much impact. Though we could see the price of tomatoes, instead of a 50 kg basket of tomatoes produced in the north, moving from like 25,000, it came to about 15,000. Now, so we could not say that it was primarily because of the funds, because most of the river basins who are primarily responsible for dry season farming, especially the southwest, none of them operated with the funds.
Why?
They didn't, I don't know. Administratively, we don't know, because I was on the farm and I operate across like 3 states in the southwestern states, and I have a good network. In the southwestern part of the country, nobody had access to that fund. When I say nobody, I mean the real farmers.
Were there any form of complaints too? I know that farmers do have bodies, associations that they belong to, and so was there any form of complaints to say, we in this area did not get any amount of money from the fund? Was there any such complaints?
Yeah,
are you aware of any?
No, they did not complain. You know, the way most of these cooperatives work, on every river basin project, you have cooperatives. Now, the way it works is because most of them are rural-based, there's no platform to channel the challenges. I was on 3 of these river basins last year, and nothing happened. Also, I was in Niger Delta, Delta and Koa, all the river basins there, and I personally went to Abuja and to make inquiry, and I was told it was for a particular part of the country.
Particular part? What parts were you told?
It was strictly for the northern part.
The 14 billion naira?
Yes. Even at that, we could not see...
Or should we say that there were other amounts earmarked for other regions or other parts of the country?
Well, we only heard about the 14. Initially, it was a 20 billion that was announced. I saw it. I saw the ads on television. You know, so, but at the end of the day, we had 14. But except for the price of tomatoes, because we need to be objective, except for the price of tomatoes that should have hit like 25,000 in the range of 15 to 20, we could say maybe. But even at that, you know, the dry season program is supposed to be the period where farmers can maximize profits, because like over 95% of the farmers cannot produce in the dry season because of rainfalls. So if we're going to be effective in producing food, like we missed an opportunity this year, and we've been missing it for the last 8-10 years, of how farmers can begin to export vegetables to the West African coast. And so if the funds is coming in January, and they will start operations, and the rains will come, it doesn't work. And most of government incentives come at the wrong timing, even when we have experts, managing these things now. So it's a bit of a challenge to really pinpoint where things are going wrong.
Do you think that the government is a bit distracted because of the ongoing political elections that will be taking place in February? Do you think that that could
personally
would have delayed a number of things?
No.
All right. I'd like us to assess the past 4 years in terms of the agriculture reforms of the federal government. We talked about the AgriFest 2015, which was organized to mark the 4 years of aggressive agriculture reforms and implementation of the agriculture transformation agenda of the government. How would you assess this in terms of how these would have aided food production in the country?
I would give it a 40-50%.
With all the effort of the Minister of Agriculture?
Yes, from the field perspective. When it comes to awareness, I would give it a 98%. Now, and for the sector to move to the next level of food security, we need that massive level of awareness. We need the private sector to wake up to getting into the agricultural industry, and that has been achieved. So I will give a 98%, if not 100 for that. But when it comes to the food security itself, I would score it 40-50. And why? Now, there's a lot of awareness on enterprise development. Without the support of the institutions that will make the enterprises flourish. So what you've seen over the years is that you find a lot of private sector who come into the sector and discover that the fertilizers are still not the standards. You'll find out that the chemicals in the market, they're still not standards.
As supplied by government.
As supplied by government. And let me say this, and the minister spoke about this last year. The seeds given to farmers in 2014 caused losses to the farmers. Take, for instance, maize. They gave like a 70-day variety of maize to mature. When the farmers planted it across board, when the farmers planted it, they mixed, there was nobody, the standards were not there. So you plant a maize you're supposed to harvest in 70 days, and you now find varieties that are mature in 85 days, varieties that mature in 90 days and beyond. So it was losses. And you find there's what they call rogging, which is when you are processing the seeds, there should be a standard size so that you can have a bumper harvest. You have everything mixed up. Nobody is standardizing, looking at the institutions that are responsible for making sure that the farmers get the right seeds. So this comes under the GES program. Now, the GES program itself is a fantastic one. Maybe in 15 years, we've not had it as good as that. But when we don't have institutions strengthened with whatever resources is required to make sure that the right things get to the farmers, it will be garbage in, garbage out. And that's what we've had. Why
do you think we're not checking the standards, as used by you, the standards of seeds, the quality of seed? What do you think would have gone wrong? Because we need to get the very best out of every farming season, whether it's dry season or whatever season it is. What do you think would have gone wrong in that regard?
I think that the challenge here now is the focus on enterprise development as against supporting institutions. Now, wanting a lot of people to step into the value chain and co is good. However, things have gone so bad in 20 years that we don't have enough extension services. The private sector will not put money into funding extension projects because that's government work. So when we don't have extension services, who makes sure that what they supplied is the right quality? Who interacts with the farmers? Then you know, there's a gap there. So the government needs to pay attention to extension. When Agric was working in Nigeria, it was because we had a good extension service. When we had the multinationals, the Sibagegi, the Syngenta, who were funding farmers, they were funding because they were also funding part of the extension. Because you find like Sibagegi that we patronized then, you know, they were funding some farmers who were taking care of the farmers, supplying them cocoa and other chemicals. So government still needs to put in a lot of funds in reactivating the extension services in Nigeria. Until that is done, every other value chain, you know, is missing. Take, for instance, we developed silos. The president commissioned 100,000 metric tons. But last year, from June, the prices of maize has dropped. And the farmers don't have anybody mopping the maize up across the nation. So what's the essence of the silo? When the farmers cannot sell, the price of a kilogram of maize is still about 30 to 38, fluctuating. Cassava that we're talking about, transformation, cassava is everywhere in the Southwest, nobody buying. So we need to really get things right. Yes, agriculture is doing beyond the talking. We need to get down and focus on the small and medium scale farmers as against the big commercial people. Yes, we can invest in them, the commercial, but primarily, see, the people who are the multinationals who have the funds to do this big project can bring in their fertilizers, can bring in their chemicals. But the rural farmers who, if things even go wrong, they can divest. They can say, okay, Agric does not pay us, let's go back. But the farmers don't have anywhere else to go. Last year, most of the feed companies shut down because there was no soya in Nigeria. Who produces the soya? Northeast, where we have challenges. Now,
the insecurity issues.
Insecurity issues. And why did they not produce? Because the farmers were no longer going to the farms. They were afraid of being attacked. So that made all the big feed producers shut down. So what we have now is most of the poultry farmers have reduced their capacity because they still had to be feeding birds, and they were not able to increase the price of the eggs. So we really need to get back to the drawing board and really, really get this transformation agenda really practical that influences the rural farmers. It's still about the rural farmers. If the rural farmers did not produce and the whole industry shut down, the livestock, then it means that we need to pay attention to them, make sure that they are thriving before we look at the big companies and codes.